Hi, my name's Carol Schlosar, and I'm an artist and a musician, and I live here in Sycamoose. I paint in acrylic, and I paint in oil, and I do screen print. And I'm really happy to be part of this project that the Arts Council has put together to bring painting to more people. Painting is so much fun. What I'm going to do with you today in this short video is work with you on color mixing. The paints that you've been given in your kit are Liquitex Basic, and they contain 3 primary colors, black and white and phthalo green. And what we're going to do together is learn to mix them to try to get the maximum number of colors that we possibly can out of this kit. And that way your projects will be more predictable and you'll have a greater understanding of the tools that you're using when you're painting. So the best way to get to know your paints is to make a color wheel. I'm using our 3 primary colors here to make our color wheel, and the theory is that if you're using your primary colors, by combining them you should be able to make almost every color. Now, one thing about acrylics is that they dry out very quickly, so you have to work a little bit with that. Now, one way you can keep them moist is to use just water, give them a little spray every once in a while. You can use a commercial retardant, and if you put a few drops of that in there, it'll keep it workable for a lot longer. Or you can do what I have, which is a Stay Wet palette. And a Stay Wet palette has a sponge underneath and a permeable paper on top so that the moisture from the sponge can carry through and keep your paints quite moist. You can make one of those at home with a Tupperware container and putting a sponge in the bottom and a bit of parchment paper on the top, and that will allow your paints to stay workable much longer. You're going to have to use water and keep your brush a little moist as you're working with the paints, otherwise it won't spread. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work with our primary colors here. So by mixing 2 primary colors together, we will get a secondary color. And that we can work our way around our color wheel. Now you should have a copy of the color wheel in your package, and you can either copy it out onto a larger piece of paper or paint directly on it, but it'll give you some experience of working with the paints. So I'm going to start by mixing our yellow and our red. So I'll just take a little bit of this with my palette knife, and I'll take a little bit of red, and I will mix it together. As you can see, that red is quite strong, but it's starting to make an orange. I'm just going to wipe it off. Have to add a little bit more yellow to get there we go. There, now I've mixed my orange. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my yellow and my blue. Now my blue is quite strong, and we know probably from elementary school that if we mix our blue and our yellow, we should get a green. I'm going to need more yellow. Okay, there we have a lovely green. And I'm going to clean this off again. And I'm going to do the same thing with my red and my blue. And I don't want to contaminate my paint, so I make sure that I wipe it off quite well in between. And what I want to mix up now is a violet or purple. Both being the same, but just generally on a color wheel, they will call it a violet. You might have to play around a little bit with the amount you're using. It might not be half and half. It might be one color more than the other, because often one of those colors is stronger than the other. Okay, now I'm going to wet one of my brushes here. Let me use this one. And that was the one that I had a bit of phthalo in it. So since we had phthalo in there, let's use our green, and we're going to put our saturated colors, that means the sort of the full strength color, in the middle sections here. And you're really just looking for what is your basic color that you're putting in there. It doesn't have to be perfect, as you can see, and you can always go back in afterwards and darken it up, fill in the spaces. I'm going to clean my brush, and as you can see here, I've got 2 containers so I can make sure my brush is really clean in between. And now I'll take my orange and put it in the space in between. So these are my secondary colors. These are colors that have been created by mixing 2 primary colors. And clean the brush. And let's do violet. Now, of course, the more water you have in your brush, the more diluted the paint will be. So you'll play around with it as you're painting your color wheel to get a feel for how thick you want that paint to be. And of course, if there's more water that's in there, the lighter the color will be. All of these things you add to your toolbox because it's going to mean you can use more colors. Okay, so now we've done that. We've got our primary colors, and now we've got our 3 secondary colors. Now we're going to make tertiary colors by taking one of the primaries and adding it to one of the secondaries. So we're shifting the colors a little bit. So instead of just having a yellow, we will have a yellow-green. And I'm going to have to put down more yellow. There we go. As you can see, the blue is pretty strong. And you're going to find with different brands of paint that the paint load will be different. Some will be more intense and some will be less intense. So there's our yellow-green. And I've got a bit of a glare from the light on it. So I'm hoping I'm hitting the right spots. And then we're going to do the same thing with our green, and we're going to add our blue to it. That blue is really intense. As you can see, I've kind of sprawled out a little bit with my paints. And you'll probably find the best way for you to work will be your own individual way. I find that I mix directly on my palette. I don't pre-mix a lot. So that blue could be a little bit bluer. Oh, one thing that I should mention is that acrylic paints always dry darker than they look when they're wet. Okay, and we'll do a violet blue. That blue is really strong. I might have to go in afterwards and add a little bit more of the purple to get really the color that I'm looking for. There we go. So I'm actually mixing it pretty much directly on the paper there. And then we would do the same with violet red and mixing our violet and our red together, and our red and our orange and our orange and our yellow. So rather than make you wait and watch paint dry for that length of time, I'm going to stop and magically come back with it done. So I finished the center of our color wheel, and we've got our three primary colors, our red, our yellow, and our blue, and we made our secondary colors by combining our primaries to get a secondary, and our tertiary by taking our primary and adding a secondary to it. So now what we're going to do is create a tint, and a tint is a lighter version of the colors that you have here. These are all what we would call saturated colors. They're very full. They're basically straight from the tube and mixed. So they're as intense as they can be. So what we're going to do now is make a tint by adding white, because you have white in your kit as well. So I'll start with the blue. So I've simply added white, and then this will give you an idea of what the lighter color will look like. And of course you can go on and you can make a color wheel that has, whoops, I've got a little yellow in there. You could make a color wheel that could continue out so you could get the much lighter colors, and you can really get an idea of how far you can go then. Then also what we're going to do is we're going to, after I have done all of the tints, then we're going to do the shades. And the shades will be in the center, and they are going to be created by adding a little black. So I will just do that with the red here, just to give you an idea. And then again, again we will go to that magic, like the oven in the old commercials, where the host would simply go and take the finished product out of the oven. Now that's going to be a bit too dark. So, but you can get quite a nice deep burgundy with that color by mixing black and red. So. Now black does have a tendency to deaden color, straight black from the tube. Now the name of these paints, the color names, they call them primary red, primary blue, and primary yellow. There are a lot of different types of red, blue, and yellow, and you're going to probably explore them, and you're going to find your color wheel will turn out very, very different if you're using something other than what they're calling primary here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill in the rest of the circle, including the phthalo green that I've done over here, adding the green, the yellow green, and the blue green. And then we'll come back and take a look and see what it looks like.